Right now, somewhere in the world, a developer just like you is staring at an error they can't solve. They're questioning everything, their intelligence, their choice of career, their entire future. And in the next 60 seconds, one of two things will happen. They'll close their laptop and tell themselves they're not cut out for this. Or they'll take a breath, open the documentation, and try again. The difference between these two developers isn't talent. It isn't education. It isn't luck. It's something far more powerful. It's a mental fortress, a psychological structure so solid that doubt can't penetrate it and failure can't collapse it. It is the difference between a career of mediocrity and a career of success. This audiobook will teach you how to build yours, because the code you write is only as strong as the mind that writes it. Chapter 1. The Lie. You've been told about talent. You've been lied to, not by one person, not by one institution, by an entire culture that worships the idea of natural talent. They told you that great developers are born, not made, that some people just get it and others don't, that if JavaScript doesn't click for you immediately, if you're still Googling syntax after 6 months, if you need Stack Overflow open in another tab just to get through a coding session, maybe you're not cut out for this. That's the lie, and it's destroying your potential. Listen carefully. Every senior engineer you admire, every architect, every tech lead, every developer whose GitHub profile makes you feel inadequate, was once exactly where you are right now. Confused by async/await, frustrated by merge conflicts, staring at documentation that might as well be written in hieroglyphics, ready to quit. The difference between them and the people who quit wasn't talent, not some genetic gift. The difference was this: they refused to believe that struggle means inadequacy. There are two developers staring at the same error message right now. The first one sees type error, cannot read property of undefined, and their internal narrative begins. I'm too stupid for this. Everyone else understands this. I should have studied harder. Maybe I'm not meant to be a developer. The second developer sees the exact same error and thinks, interesting. I referenced something before checking if it exists. Let me add a conditional. Let me console.log the object. Let me read this function again. Same error, same moment. Two completely different fortresses being built. The first developer is letting their emotions interpret technical feedback. The second developer is treating the error as what it actually is, data. That's the key. Frustration is not failure. Getting stuck on LeetCode medium problems is not incompetence. Spending 2 hours debugging a null pointer exception is not a sign you're in the wrong field. It's a sign your brain is adapting. Your brain rewires itself through repeated exposure to difficulty. That's not motivational fluff. It's measurable neuroscience. The myelin sheaths around your neurons thicken with practice. Pattern recognition pathways strengthen with repetition. What feels impossible today becomes automatic tomorrow, but only if you stay in the discomfort long enough. Intelligence is not something you're born with. It's built through repetition. But you don't believe that yet. You're still waiting. You're waiting for the moment when it all suddenly makes sense. The magical day when you wake up and understand pointers or big O notation, or why someone would ever use a linked list instead of an array. That day doesn't come. What comes instead is this. You struggle with object-oriented programming today. You struggle with it tomorrow. You watch 3 YouTube tutorials and still don't get inheritance. You build a class wrong 5 times. And then, one day, 6 months later, you're explaining polymorphism to someone else and you don't even remember when it stopped being hard. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Marcus has been learning to code for 18 months. 4 boot camps completed. Hundreds of hours of YouTube tutorials consumed. 17 half-finished projects in his repositories. Marcus believes in talent. When he hits a roadblock, he assumes he's missing some foundational knowledge, so he starts another course. When his code doesn't work, he convinces himself he's not getting it, the way naturally talented developers would. Marcus is still looking for his first developer job. Priya started learning at the same time as Marcus. She only picked one language, Python, and built one project, a web scraper that evolved into a full data analysis tool. Her code was terrible at first. Functions that should have been 5 lines were 50. She didn't understand decorators for months. She used global variables everywhere, but she didn't restart. She refactored. She broke things. She Googled the same error messages dozens of times. She asked questions on Reddit and got downvoted for asking basic things. Priya got her first job 8 months ago. She's now mentoring junior developers. The difference wasn't talent, it was belief. Marcus believed talent was real, so every struggle confirmed he didn't have it. Priya believed competence was built, so every struggle confirmed she was building it. You don't see the thousands of hours senior devs spent confused. You don't see the projects they abandoned. You don't see the bugs that made them question their entire careers. You only see the polished pull request, the clean commits, the deployed application, and you compare it to your messy process. Stop doing that. The fortress isn't built by people who feel ready. It's built by people who code anyway. You're waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting for that internal voice that says, yes, now you're a real developer. That voice never comes. Not before you start, only after. Confidence doesn't create competence. Competence creates confidence. Every line of code you write, even the broken ones, even the spaghetti code that makes you cringe a month later, is proof that you're in the arena. Proof that you're building the fortress brick by brick. Stop waiting to feel ready and start building evidence. Evidence is the crud app you built that actually works, even if the code is ugly. Evidence is the segmentation fault you finally tracked down after 3 hours of debugging. Evidence is the rest. API endpoint you explained to a classmate, even though you barely understand HTTP. Evidence is the algorithm you implemented that has O of n squared complexity when it should be O of n log n, but it works and you shipped it. Evidence is not feelings. Feelings will tell you you're not ready. Feelings will tell you everyone else understands data structures better. Feelings will tell you to quit before you fail the technical interview. But sometimes, listen to this, your feelings are protecting you from real burnout, real exhaustion, real limits. You need to learn the difference between fear that's lying to you and fear that's warning you. But most of the time, feelings are just noise. And evidence is signal. Evidence is what you've actually deployed, debugged, and built. And every day that you code, the evidence grows. The evidence doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care if you're confident. It just accumulates in your GitHub contributions graph. quietly, until one day you look back and realize you've built something real. The talent myth wants you focused on what you are. The fortress wants you focused on what you do. Here's your assignment, your test. For the next 7 days, you will implement the evidence protocol. 1. Write code for 1 hour minimum. Not tutorials, not videos. Actual code. 2. Document one specific thing you learned. Not I learned about arrays. Instead, I learned that JavaScript arrays are zero-indexed and array.length returns undefined, not the last element. 3. Commit something to GitHub every single day, even if it's a comment, even if it's fixing a typo. The green square is evidence. 4. Rate your discomfort during each session from 1 to 10. Below 5, you're in tutorial hell, increase difficulty. Above 8, you're in panic mode, reduce scope but don't quit. The sweet spot is 6 to 7, uncomfortable but functional. 5. No browsing other people's GitHub profiles. 6. No scrolling LinkedIn for 20-year-old senior developer posts. 7. No watching. I built this in 10 minutes videos unless you're building it yourself. This is not motivational. This is tactical. You don't need talent. You need repetition. You need consistency. You need the discipline to keep pushing commits when the talent myth is screaming at you to quit. That's the first wall of your fortress, the rejection of the lie that you need to be special to succeed. You don't need to be special. You just need to show up. 7 days, 1 hour each, code, document, commit. Your fortress begins now. You've dismantled the talent myth. You understand now that struggling with sorting algorithms isn't evidence of inadequacy. It's neurological adaptation in real time. You have your protocol. You know what to do. But knowing what to do and actually doing it are separated by something more dangerous than ignorance, something that lives inside your own mind, something that whispers to you every time your code doesn't compile, every time you see that red error message, every time the imposter syndrome floods in. This enemy doesn't attack your intelligence. It attacks your ability to use it. And unless you learn to control it, everything you just learned is worthless. Chapter 2. Why your emotions are sabotaging your progress. You're staring at your screen right now. Maybe it's a runtime error you can't fix. Maybe it's a merge conflict you don't understand. Maybe it's a coding challenge that everyone says is easy, but feels impossible to you. And there's a voice in your head. It's loud. It's convincing. And it's telling you that you're not smart enough for this. That voice is not giving you information. It's giving you sabotage. Here's what no one tells you. Emotional reasoning is not logical reasoning. When you feel stupid because you don't understand recursion, that feeling is not evidence of your intelligence. It's evidence that you're learning something new. When panic floods your system during a technical interview, that panic is not proof you'll fail. It's your amygdala treating a whiteboard problem like a physical threat. Your emotions will often lie to you. They'll tell you that temporary confusion is permanent failure. They'll tell you that one bad coding session means you're in the wrong career. They'll tell you that the tightness in your chest when you see a 500-line error stack is a message from the universe that you should quit. It's not. It's just neurochemistry. And neurochemistry doesn't understand the difference between a failed deployment and a lion chasing you across the savannah. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The fortress protects you from treating feelings as facts. Let me show you how this plays out in real time. There's a developer named Sarah. Talented, hard-working, completely at the mercy of her emotional state. When Sarah's code works on the first try, she feels like a genius. She's confident. She takes on ambitious features. She applies to senior positions. When Sarah encounters a bug she can't immediately solve, the entire structure collapses. She feels like a fraud. She questions her career choice. She scrolls LinkedIn looking at boot camp graduates who got jobs faster than her and spirals into comparison paralysis. Sarah's technical skill hasn't changed between these two moments, but her emotional interpretation of the same skill has created two completely different developers. One day she's unstoppable. The next day she's convinced she should switch to marketing. This is what happens when you let emotions run your decision-making system. There's another developer named James. Similar skill level to Sarah. Completely different operating system. James encounters a bug in production. His heart rate increases. His hands get sweaty. The panic starts to rise. But James has a protocol. He doesn't ask himself, "Am I smart enough to fix this?" He asks, "What's the input? What's the expected output? Where's the gap?" He doesn't interpret the bug as evidence of his incompetence. He treats it as data. The code broke. Code breaks. That's what code does. Now he debugs. James sets a timer for 10 minutes. If he doesn't make progress, he takes a break. He doesn't doom scroll. He doesn't spiral. He walks away, resets, comes back. In that 10-minute window, something often shifts. Not every time, but frequently enough. This is the difference between someone who codes with their emotions and someone who codes despite them. Pay attention to this. The 10-minute rule separates amateurs from professionals. When frustration hits, amateurs quit immediately. The error message feels personal. The confusion feels permanent. They close the laptop and tell themselves they'll come back to it later with fresh eyes. They rarely do. Or if they do, they bring the same emotional operating system and repeat the cycle. Professionals set a timer for 10 more minutes, not because they're more disciplined, not because they feel less frustration, because they've learned that breakthroughs tend to happen in the window, right after you want to quit. In that 10-minute window, you'll often find the typo you missed 17 times, the logic error that becomes obvious once you read it out loud, the Stack Overflow post that's right under your nose, the realization that you were passing a string when the function expected an integer. Not every time, but often enough that this single habit compounds into years of retained knowledge that quitters never accumulate. Here's the truth no one tells you. Your emotional state is a weather pattern, not a destination. Bad coding days don't mean you're a bad coder any more than rain means the sun is gone forever. You will have days where nothing compiles. Days where you can't remember basic syntax. Days where junior developers seem to grasp concepts faster than you. These days are not diagnostic. They're meteorological. The fortress teaches you to work in all conditions, knowing that clarity usually returns if you refuse to abandon the process. So, here's your choice. You can keep letting your emotions dictate your technical progress. You can keep treating every bug as a referendum on your intelligence. You can keep quitting right before the breakthrough because the discomfort feels unbearable. Or you can build a different system. For the next 14 days, you will implement a structured separation between feeling and action. Stage 1. The recognition phase. Days 1 to 3. Every time you feel the urge to quit during a coding session, pause. Name the emotion out loud. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling stupid. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Write it down, time stamp it, rate it 1 to 10. Then code for 10 more minutes. After the 10 minutes, log whether you made progress or not. Stage 2. The pattern phase. Days 4 to 10. Review your emotion logs. You'll notice something. The emotions that felt permanent lasted 6 to 12 minutes on average. You'll see that most of the time, the 10-minute rule produced either a breakthrough or enough progress to continue. This is evidence, not motivation. Evidence that your feelings are often poor predictors of your capability. Stage 3. The automation phase. Days 11 to 14. Now you don't need to write it down. Frustration hits. You recognize it. You acknowledge it. This is the feeling. It's not truth. Timer starts now. 10 minutes. Every time. This becomes your default response to emotional interference. The debug ritual. When you encounter a problem that triggers emotional spiral, 1. Externalize it. Rubber duck debugging exists because explaining the problem out loud to an inanimate object forces you out of emotional reasoning and into logical sequencing. 2. Reduce scope. You're trying to build an entire authentication system and spiraling. Strip it down. Can you make one endpoint work? Can you hash one password? Can you validate one token? Smaller problems, smaller emotions. 3. Binary search your panic. Just like binary search and algorithms, divide the problem in half. Which half contains the bug? Focus there. Cut the problem space. Cut the emotional load. Let me tell you what happens when you master this. You'll be in a technical interview. The interviewer will give you a problem you've never seen before. The panic will start to rise. That familiar tightness in your chest, the voice saying, "You should know this." But you won't spiral. You'll recognize it. You'll name it. You'll set your internal timer. And while the other candidate is freezing, paralyzed by the emotion, you'll be thinking out loud, breaking the problem down, treating it like data instead of judgment. You won't always get the answer, but you'll get further than someone with better technical skills and worse emotional infrastructure. Here's the paradox. When you stop treating your emotions as absolute truth, they lose their power over you. And when they lose their power over you, they quiet down. Not gone, just manageable. The irony is this. The developers who seem naturally calm under pressure aren't calm. They're just practiced at not obeying the panic. But understand this. Success brings its own emotional traps. You'll fix the bug that's been breaking production for weeks. You'll feel invincible, and that feeling will make you sloppy. You'll skip writing tests. You'll deploy without reviewing. You'll assume you're too good to make mistakes, and you'll break something worse. The fortress doesn't just protect you from negative emotions. It protects you from positive ones, too. The challenge. Right now. Today. Find a coding problem that frustrates you. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Code through the discomfort. Log what happened. Do it again tomorrow. And the next day. This is how the second wall of your fortress gets built. The ability to operate when your emotions are screaming at you to stop. You've built emotional firewall protocols. You understand now that feelings are weather, not prophecy. You know that the 10-minute rule is the difference between those who learn and those who quit. But here's what you don't know yet. Your emotions aren't the only sabotage system running in the background. There's another force actively destroying your progress. It's more insidious because it doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like research. It feels like motivation. It feels like you're being productive. You're not. You're feeding a bug that grows stronger every time you check your phone. Let's debug it. Chapter 3. The Hidden Cost of Comparison. You know what you did this morning. You opened LinkedIn, or GitHub, or Twitter, or some coding Discord server. And within 3 minutes, you saw someone younger than you who's already a senior developer. Someone who built in 2 weeks what you've been struggling with for 2 months. Someone who got hired at a FANG company straight out of boot camp while you can't even get past the automated coding assessment. And something inside you broke. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a quiet collapse. A small voice that whispered, "Maybe I'm too late. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should have started earlier." That voice is destroying you. Here's what you need to understand. Every minute spent comparing is a minute stolen from building. When you scroll through GitHub looking at repositories that make your projects feel inadequate, you're not researching, you're not learning, you're not gathering motivation, you're self-sabotaging. And you've been doing it so long you don't even recognize it as sabotage anymore. You think it's staying informed. You think it's seeing what's possible. You think it's learning from others. It's none of those things. It's comparison. And comparison is poison. Theodore Roosevelt said it a century ago. Comparison is the thief of joy. But it's worse than that for developers. Comparison isn't just stealing your joy, it's stealing your time, your focus, your momentum. Your belief that you can build anything worth building. Listen closely. Those developers had bad code once too. The architect whose TypeScript looks flawless, their first JavaScript looked like yours. The engineer whose system design is elegant, their first database schema was a mess of circular dependencies and N+1 queries. You're comparing your Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20, and it's destroying your momentum. Let me show you how this plays out. There's a developer named Alex, 23 years old, learned Python 2 years ago. Decent skills, solid projects, could get a junior position if he applied. But Alex doesn't apply. Every morning, Alex opens LinkedIn. He sees posts from developers his age who are already senior engineers. He sees boot camp graduates landing $150,000 jobs. He sees teenagers building startups. Alex tells himself he's staying current with the market. But what he's actually doing is building a mental database of evidence that he's behind. By noon, Alex has convinced himself he needs to learn Rust, or Go, or whatever the trending language is that week, because if he doesn't, he'll fall further behind. So Alex starts a new tutorial, gets halfway through, sees someone on Twitter who's already shipping production Rust applications, feels inadequate again, abandons the tutorial. 2 years in, Alex has learned 12 frameworks and shipped 0 real projects. This is what comparison does. It creates motion without progress. There's another developer named Maya, same age as Alex, similar starting point. But Maya made a different choice 6 months ago. She deleted LinkedIn from her phone, muted every coding influencer on Twitter, left every Discord server except one small community where people actually help each other debug, not flex their accomplishments. Maya stopped researching what she should know and started building what she wanted to know. She picked Flask, built a terrible blog application, refactored it, added authentication, broke it, fixed it, deployed it. It's ugly. The code is messy, but it's live. Then she built a second project. Better code this time. Then a third. 6 months later, Maya has a portfolio. Alex has opinions about which framework is best. The difference isn't talent, it's attention. Maya's attention went into her code. Alex's attention went into everyone else's code. Pay attention to this. Comparison creates a fixed timeline that doesn't exist. You tell yourself you should already know Docker because other people your age do. You should understand system design because that's what senior developers know. You should have contributed to open source by now because everyone says that's important, but there is no cosmic schedule. There is no deadline for competence. There is no universal syllabus that says, by age 24, you must understand microservices architecture. The only race that matters is against the person you were yesterday. Did you know more today than you knew yesterday? Did you write better code this week than last week? Did you solve a problem this month that you couldn't solve last month? That's the only measurement that matters. Everything else is noise. Here's the truth no one tells you. The people you're comparing yourself to aren't thinking about you at all. The senior developer whose LinkedIn post made you feel inadequate, they're not measuring themselves against you. They're measuring themselves against where they want to be. The bootcamp graduate who got hired faster than you, they're too busy onboarding and learning the code base to care about your timeline. The developer whose GitHub contributions graph is solid green, they're not tracking who's behind them. They're tracking what they're building next. You're in a race that only exists in your head. So here's your choice. You can keep feeding the comparison machine. You can keep scrolling. You can keep collecting evidence that you're not enough, not fast enough, not good enough. Or you can build a fortress with no windows facing outward. Understand this. Inside your mental fortress, there is only you, your code, and your progress. What others are doing is irrelevant data. It doesn't affect your learning curve. It doesn't change what you need to do today. It doesn't make your code compile faster or slower. Build your walls thick enough that external noise can't penetrate, because the moment you let comparison in, doubt follows immediately behind it. The Comparison Blackout Protocol. For the next 30 days, you will implement strategic isolation from all comparison triggers. Phase 1. Information Quarantine. Days 1 to 7. Identify your poison. Where do you go to feel inadequate? LinkedIn, GitHub trending, Twitter tech accounts, Reddit's r/CSS career questions. Write them down. All of them. Delete the apps from your phone. Block the websites during work hours using browser extensions like Cold Turkey or Freedom. You still need technical information, but you'll get it differently. Subscribe to documentation sites, MDN, official framework docs, language specifications. Join one, and only one, small community focused on helping, not flexing. Replace scrolling with reading, technical books, deep dive blog posts, actual documentation. Phase 2, evidence accumulation, days 8 to 21. The daily progress log. Every evening, write down 3 things you learned or built that day. Not, I learned React. Instead, I learned how use effect cleanup functions prevent memory leaks. Not, I worked on my project. Instead, I implemented JWT token refresh logic and handled edge cases for expired sessions. This is your new feed, your progress. No one else's. The weekly wins document. Every Sunday, review your daily logs. Write a summary of what you shipped, debugged, or understood this week. Track only your trajectory. Ignore everyone else's. Phase 3, competitive redirection, days 22 to 30. Here's the secret. You don't eliminate the competitive drive. You redirect it. The Ghost Race Protocol. You're not racing other developers. You're racing past versions of yourself. Could last month's you solve today's problem? If yes, you're stagnating. If no, you're growing. Could last week's you write code this clean? If yes, refactor it. If no, you're evolving. The asymmetric advantage. While they're comparing, you're building. While they're switching frameworks to chase trends, you're mastering one. While they're curating their LinkedIn presence, you're debugging production issues. This is asymmetric warfare. They don't even know the battle is happening. Let me tell you what happens when you master this. 3 months from now, someone will ask what you've been working on, and you'll show them something real. Not perfect, not production ready for a Fortune 500 company, but real. A functioning application, a solved problem, a contribution to an open source project, evidence. And they'll ask, how did you find time to build all this? You won't tell them the truth. The truth is, you found time by stopping the comparison loop. You reclaimed the hours they're still spending scrolling. You redirected the mental energy they're still wasting on feeling inadequate. But here's the paradox, and this is critical. The moment you stop comparing yourself to others, they'll start comparing themselves to you. When you're quietly building while they're loudly performing, you create a gap. Not intentionally, just inevitably. And one day you'll open LinkedIn because you're human and you'll check eventually. And you'll see someone asking how you got so good so fast. And you'll realize they think you have talent. They think you're naturally gifted. They think you had some advantage they didn't have. They don't know the truth. The truth is you just stopped watching them and started building. But here's the warning. Success will tempt you to break the blackout. You'll want to post your wins. You'll want validation. You'll want everyone who doubted you to see what you've built. Resist. The fortress has no windows facing outward for a reason. Once you start performing for an audience, you stop building for yourself. And the moment you start optimizing for external validation, comparison creeps back in. The challenge. Right now, today, before you finish this chapter, delete one app, block one website, leave one community that makes you feel behind. Tomorrow, start your daily progress log. 3 things you learned. Written down. No comparison. Just evidence. Do this for 30 days. This is the 3rd wall of your fortress, the ability to build in silence while the world performs in noise. You've built the comparison blackout. You understand now that other people's timelines are irrelevant to your trajectory. You know that the only race that matters is against yesterday's version of yourself. But here's what you haven't faced yet. What happens when the comparison stops, when the noise fades, when the distraction disappears? What's left is you, alone, with your code, with your doubts, with no external metric to tell you if you're doing well. And in that silence, you'll encounter the most dangerous enemy you've faced yet. Not imposter syndrome, not comparison, not emotional sabotage. Something worse. The enemy that shows up when there's no one left to blame, no excuses left to make, and nowhere left to hide from the simple, brutal question. Are you actually building anything, or are you just going through the motions? Chapter 4. Failure is information, not identity. You broke production last week. Or maybe it wasn't production. Maybe it was just your local environment. Maybe it was a coding challenge you thought would take 20 minutes but consumed 3 hours, and you still didn't solve it. Maybe it was a pull request that got rejected with comments like, "This won't scale," and "Did you even test this?" And you felt it, that crushing weight, not just disappointment, something deeper, shame. You felt like the failure revealed something true about you, something you'd been hiding, proof that you're not actually cut out for this, evidence that everyone else belongs here and you're just pretending. Listen to me. You are not your broken code. When your program crashes, when your algorithm fails, when your deployment breaks production, these are events, not reflections of your worth. The fortress separates what happened from who you are. Failed code is debugging data. Nothing more, nothing less. But you've been conditioned to treat it as identity confirmation. Society taught you that failure means you're a failure. School taught you that wrong answers mean you're wrong. Every rejection email, every failed interview, every bug that took hours to fix has been building a case in your mind that maybe you're just not good enough. That case is fiction. Nietzsche said, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." But he was wrong about one thing. Suffering doesn't automatically make you stronger. Only examined suffering makes you stronger. Only failure that you extract lessons from becomes strength. Everything else is just pain. The fortress doesn't prevent failure. It weaponizes it. Let me show you 2 developers facing the exact same failure. There's a developer named Chris, mid-level skills, decent understanding of JavaScript, gets assigned a feature, implement real-time notifications using WebSockets. Chris has never worked with WebSockets before. He reads the documentation, watches tutorials, writes the code, deploys to staging. It doesn't work. The connections drop randomly, messages arrive out of order. Under load, the whole thing crashes. Chris's internal dialogue. "I'm terrible at this. Real developers would have gotten this right. I should have known about connection pooling. I should have anticipated race conditions. Everyone's going to see this code review and know I'm a fraud." Chris spends the next 3 days rewriting everything from scratch. Not because the first attempt was fundamentally wrong, because the failure felt like a verdict on his competence. He's still working on it 2 weeks later, paralyzed, afraid to push code that might fail again. There's another developer named Jordan. Same skill level, same feature assignment, same WebSocket failure. But Jordan's internal dialogue is different. Interesting. WebSockets dropped under load. That means my connection handling isn't accounting for network instability. Let me check how I'm managing reconnection logic. Let me add heartbeat pings. Let me test what happens when 100 concurrent users connect. Jordan treats the failure as a debugging session, not a referendum, not evidence of inadequacy, just data. 3 days later, Jordan has a working solution, not perfect, but functional, shipped. The difference isn't skill, it's interpretation. Chris treated failure as identity. I failed, therefore I am a failure. Jordan treated failure as information. This failed, therefore I need different information. This is critical. Here's the truth. The most valuable lessons are hidden inside your mistakes. Every senior developer you admire has a graveyard of failed projects. AWS outages they caused, databases they corrupted, algorithms they optimized that made performance worse, architectural decisions they regret so deeply they wake up at 3 a.m. remembering them years later. Those failures weren't obstacles to their success. They were the foundation of it. You're not behind because you're failing. You're behind if you're not failing enough. Junior developers who spend 3 weeks making their authentication system perfect. Before testing it, learn slower than developers who implement basic login, test it, watch it break, fix the session handling, break it again, add password hashing, realize they're storing tokens wrong, refactor, test again. One approach feels safe, the other feels chaotic. But chaos with feedback beats perfection without deployment. Reframe failure as feedback velocity. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. The fortress doesn't prevent failure, it weaponizes it. Every error message becomes strategic intelligence. Every stack trace becomes a map of what you don't understand yet. So here's your choice. You can keep treating failure as identity confirmation. You can keep letting broken code convince you that you're broken. You can keep hiding your mistakes, rewriting everything in private, never shipping until it's perfect. Or you can build a failure processing system, the failure autopsy protocol. For the next 21 days, you will systematically extract intelligence from every failure. Phase 1. The immediate capture. Days 1 to 7. When something breaks, stop the identity spiral immediately. The moment you think, "I'm so stupid," or "I'll never be good at this," interrupt it. Say out loud, "The code failed. I did not fail. What information does this give me?" Document the failure forensically. What was supposed to happen? What actually happened? What was the error message? Copy it exactly. Don't paraphrase. What was the input that triggered it? What assumptions did I make that were wrong? Implement the 5 why debug. 1. Why did it fail? Because the API returned null. 2. Why did the API return null? Because the request timed out. 3. Why did it time out? Because I didn't set a timeout limit. 4. Why didn't I set one? Because I didn't know I needed to. 5. Why didn't I know? Because I didn't read about error handling in async requests. Root cause identified. Lesson extracted. Phase 2. The pattern recognition. Days 8 to 14. Create your failure library. Start a document titled Bugs I've Fixed and What They Taught Me. Every failure gets an entry. Date. What broke. Root cause. What I learned. How to prevent it next time. Weekly pattern analysis. Every Sunday, review your failures for the week. Look for patterns. Do you always forget to validate input? Do you consistently underestimate edge cases? Do you skip error handling to ship faster? These patterns are not character flaws. They're curriculum. Your mistakes are telling you what to study next. Phase 3. The weaponization. Days 15 to 21. Deliberate failure injection. This is advanced, and it requires safety protocols. In your test environments, local projects, or staging, never production, start breaking things on purpose. Build a feature, then ask, what happens if the database is slow? What if the user sends malformed JSON? What if 2 requests hit this endpoint simultaneously? Test those scenarios in safe environments. Watch them break. Fix them before they reach production. The public failure log. This is optional but powerful. Share 1 failure per week in a blog post, tweet, or dev community. Format. I broke X. Here's why. Here's what I learned. 2 things happen. 1. You stop hiding failures. 2. Other developers realize they're not alone. The failure quota. Set a minimum number of meaningful failures per week in safe environments. Not typos. Real architectural mistakes, logic errors, performance issues discovered through testing. If you haven't broken anything this week in development, you're probably not pushing your limits enough. Let me tell you what happens when you master this. 6 months from now, you'll encounter a catastrophic bug in production, something that takes the service down, something that affects real users, something that 2 years ago would have sent you into a shame spiral for days. But you won't spiral. You'll treat it like a debugging session. You'll check the logs. You'll trace the request. You'll find the race condition or the memory leak or the infinite loop. You'll fix it. You'll write a post-mortem. You'll add monitoring so it doesn't happen again. And while everyone around you is panicking, you'll be calm. Not because you don't care, because you've built the infrastructure to turn failure into intelligence. Here's the paradox. Developers who fear failure often make more critical mistakes, because fear makes you rush. Fear makes you skip tests. Fear makes you hide problems until they're catastrophic. Developers who treat failure as data tend to make fewer critical mistakes in production, because they're breaking things early, in controlled environments, learning from small failures before they become big ones. But here's the warning. This path will make you comfortable with failure. Maybe too comfortable. You'll start to think that shipping broken code is acceptable, that move fast and break things means you don't need to care about quality. That failure is always a learning opportunity, so it doesn't matter if you're sloppy. Wrong. The fortress weaponizes failure, but it doesn't worship it. There's a difference between strategic failure, breaking things to learn in safe environments, and negligent failure, breaking things because you didn't care enough to check. Learn the difference. Fast. The challenge. Today. Right now. Find something you built that you're afraid to test because it might break. Test it in a safe environment. Watch it break. Document what broke and why. Fix it. Do it again tomorrow. This is the fourth wall of your fortress, the ability to extract intelligence from destruction instead of letting destruction extract your confidence. You've built the failure autopsy system. You understand now that broken code doesn't mean you're broken. It means you have new information. You know that controlled failure in safe environments accelerates learning faster than perfectionism. But here's what you haven't confronted yet. All of this, the talent rejection, the emotional firewall, the comparison blackout, the failure weaponization, it requires something most people don't have. And this isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. Brick by brick. Let's build it.